Hello and welcome back to Painting of the Geeks. You join us again for another Star Wars Shatterpoint painting video, and today we're actually going to be looking at the terrain. So to prep this terrain, we've done some rattle can zenithal highlight. So covering the entire model, especially the bottom, in Chaos Black. Then coming in at about a 45-degree angle with some Mechanica Standard Grey. And finally a top-down spray of grey cere. That leads to this nice little colour here, which is actually very similar to the box art. But we don't want to do that. So if you are looking to try and recreate that grey, that's not actually that bad, it's not far off. We're going to do something slightly different. We're not going to be using an airbrush, we're just going to be using normal brushes. See, a lot of tutorials online are using airbrushes and they look absolutely fabulous when they've done. But my airbrush is long broken and I haven't got a new one, so we're just going to be painting these. And what we eventually want it to look like is something like that. So this is the Blue Peter moment, one I prepared earlier. So the top's going to be metal, and the reason for that is I've sprayed the buildings like this, and I've also sprayed the crates in a similar method. I've sprayed all the gantries and ladders in black and then in lead belcher because it's quicker. So I want the gantries to be metal as opposed to grey, though they really do look good in grey. They do look good like this, but I'm all about making it difficult for myself, I suppose. So we have buildings sprayed like that, and we have the gantries sprayed like that. The other parts of the kits are panels like this, and so we've got the dish. They'll be painted the same way as the buildings. We also have the buildings from the other set. They will be painted pretty much the same way as the buildings. The rocks will be done differently, so we might cover them separately. And also then we have these little diorama pieces like the bike. They've all been sprayed and primed the same way as this, but all painted differently. So this is the build I'm going to be using for our video. Probably won't see any of these little bits again until the end when they're all done, apart from the little different things. And the crates as well, I might do them in some different colours just for some variation. So the first thing we're going to do is some dry brushing, or underbrushing. We have a really big TT Combat brush for this, not messing around. And what we're going to use is Starship Exterior, which I've misplaced. There it is. Starship Exterior. And what we want to do is achieve some edge highlighting very quickly on absolutely everything, apart from these. But we will be doing exactly the same thing, we'll just be using aluminum. So that's the first thing. Underbrushing, that's more of a dry brush, overbrush. But we will be putting some washes on. These will be done as quickly as possible. Most of the focus will end up on the buildings. So let's get started. So what we're hoping to achieve is using the dry brush against all the hard edges to give ourselves a nice little highlight as quickly as possible. We're also going to be focusing and stippling around lights like that. Don't worry too much about extra there, because that's going to help with the glow effect later on the light. And we're just going to sort of, and if you get a little bit like this, great, because it just adds a bit of variation into the building. But we don't want to do it too heavy, and we don't want to come across it's like and getting lines absolutely everywhere. But it's a good opportunity to put in some variation under the paints we're going to be using. And not all these will show through when we're finished. Some of the paints we're putting on later will be a bit heavier, but there is enough that it should make it a little bit more interesting. So again, to get all these areas Normally we'd highlight from above, but I still want these to show up a little bit. And these are going to be painted over quite heavily on these bits, so the dry brush on this part and this part could be a bit heavier than normal. I haven't decided if I'm going to do this bit in metal yet, so I'm just going to give this a dry brush. If I do it in metal, the dry brush is pretty pointless, but if I don't and I paint in something else, because that's the joy, I don't always decide exactly what I'm going to do. And some of these buildings might end up being different. And again, we have a light on the front, so we're going to stipple around that, give a bit of light dispersion when we put the light on. And as you can see, the brush is getting drier and drier, so we can get a bit heavier with our applications, and there's less stain on there. So this is how you do underbrushing. It's not the same as you do overbrushing or dry brushing. And we're just going to get all the details up. That's approximately what we want to do on all the terrain. We're going to do the same method on this. Only difference, like I said, we're going to be using aluminum. Right, see you in a bit. Okay, so after an epic amount of dry brushing, we have all of our buildings and everything dry brushed. This is where the buildings and the walkways will deviate from all the little parts like the crates and so on. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to use some Greyhound Grey. I'm going to pick out some of the struts on this. I don't know exactly how much I'm going to use. On the example piece, I used the Greyhound Grey on these areas and these areas, just to put some different greys in there. So I'm going to pick some out, and I'm going to put the wash on. You can take full advantage of the underbrushing we've done. So let's do that. That's where we're up to. Next, we're going to cover all these areas in Vallejo flat brown. And I'm going to do it over all this area here. What I'm basically trying to achieve is that, which was the basis for this, and around all these different sides. Anywhere where there's going to be some extra beige or brown colouring. Okay, so we've painted on that brown. The next colour we are going to do is another Vallejo colour. It is basalt grey, and we're going to paint the upper parts of the grey part we want around the door frame, around the edges here, and some of these parts here. Just put in a secondary grey and tidy that up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on all the models. What we're trying to achieve is, if I can find my test model again. There we go. Try and achieve this different colour grey in there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll be back. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to paint a lighter grey on some of the other areas, just to give some variation in which greys we've got on there. We're going to use a medium sea grey from Vallejo model colour again. And I'm going to paint it on some random areas, some of the consoles and some of the areas, some of the little bits on there. Maybe that bit. We'll see how it goes on. And yeah, so that's next, and I'll be back when I've done that. Okay, so with the second grey painted on there, we're now going to do our next colour. Well, we're going to be using another Vallejo colour. We're going to be using English Uniform. And I'm going to be using it for the bottom parts of this. Just a quick look at how this looks on. So we're just going to be putting this on, again really thin, like we did with the coat above. Get a nice smooth finish, and get some of that dark and shade that's already under there through. And that's ultimately what we want to do. And if it's too streaky, we'll just go back with the second coat. And that's about it. So we're going to go on ahead. I'm going to do the lower panels in this, or any panels that I think would look good in it, and then we'll come back with the next colour. Okay, so that's where we're up to. Next we're going to do another brown colour onto this dark brown. I kind of like this brown. I might leave this on some of the buildings actually. But we're going to be using Baneblade brown for the next bit. And we're essentially just going to be covering some of these areas, and I'm actually going to stipple some of it on just to give it a bit of a texture feel to it. And I'll probably need to do a couple of thin down layers of this over the brown. I want some of this brown to show through like mottled effects, so let's get on with that. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to paint is all the metallic areas on this. I'm going to be using the gunmetal grey colour. I'm going to be covering everything that is metal, even little light fittings, anything at all. Some of these wires on the side are sort of metal. I'm going to do them all in the same colour, and then we'll come back. Okay, so for the next stage, I'm going to go and dry brush some model colour sky grey. I'm going to focus on the greyer areas, but it doesn't really matter if I get it on this, it's still a light tone. I'm only going to do a light dry brush just to bring some of the highlights back up. That's all I want to do now to that. What I'm also going to do is another dry brush on some of the browner areas after I've done that with Iraqi sand. Again, just a really light one. And what I'm also going to do with this is some stippling effects just around the place on the brown areas with this. And I might do some on the grey areas with this one, just to bring a bit of colour variation in. So the next thing we're going to do is some dry brushing on this. I'm just going to use some of the aluminium. It's like we did at the beginning of the video with the walkways, we're just going to put some of that on. Going to be a lot more careful though, because we have a lot of other things that we don't want to hit. So I'll take some time doing this and then we'll be back. Okay, so from here we're going to do all the gantries the same now as we do with the metal parts on here. We're going to give them a very light wash of Agrix Earthshade, but we're not going to do it all over. I'm going to do some area washing. So we're literally just going to put some Agrix into some areas, like here, and maybe some over here, and I'm just going to be pretty random with it. Maybe there, maybe some there. And now I'm going to use some Athonian Camel Shade. And we're just going to put some around there. And we're just going to, where the two meet, we're just going to mix them a little bit. Maybe some around there. And this is how we're going to go. We're just going to feel it out, see how we feel. Put little blotches on here and there. Where they meet, we mix them together. And we're just going to feather that out. And that's pretty much what I'm going to do. Before it dries, I'm going to just give it a little smudgy smudge with my finger, spread it out a little bit, and that also brings up some of the metal underneath as well, instead of doing another highlight afterwards. Because essentially what we're doing is griming it up a bit, just a little bit of grime, not loads, just a little. In addition to the metal areas, what I'm going to do is, if I can find a appropriate brush, this one, which is a bit splayed and a bit naff, we're going to be taking the same two colours and we're just going to be around the bottoms mainly doing a little bit of a stippling effect on them. Just to kind of, we don't want it to be too heavy, it's just, again, it's a bit of colour variation. And we'll do a few little random flecks around the model as well. So it's just like colour splash. We don't want it too heavy. We're just going to, again, use a finger and just pull them down a little bit like that. And it gives a slight streaking appearance if you do it that way. Make sure when you bring them down, you're doing it in the same direction. And so it kind of looks a bit like streaking as well. So I'm just going to do that. Again, adding more modulation to the colouring so it doesn't look flat. And then we shall return. Okay, so that's the grimy wash on, and that is pretty much the gantries finished. In the future, I might decide to line it up by giving it another dry brush. But for gaming purposes and for now, that is done. Also in the future, depending on how durable it is, I might give it a varnish of a matte or a gloss varnish, depending on how reflective I want it to be. That thing we've just put on has dulled it down quite a bit, and that might be a good thing, to be fair. But if I want it to be shiny again, I'll probably just use a gloss spray on it. So that is the end of the gantries section. Very simple. Continuing with the buildings, we have wires we're going to do next. I've had a look around the buildings. The most wires on any building is 3 together, which is this. And there's another one that's got 3 together. So I'm going to be using Caldo Sky, Feastin' Red, and Avalon Sunset. Just as 3 wire colours. And I'll just be using them randomly amongst the buildings. There's no real plan as to which wire is going to be which colour or anything like that. It's just to have 3 different colours for the wires. So I'm just going to go ahead and put them on, and we'll see what they look like, whether they need a wash or anything. But I don't really want these to be bright, because we're going to be in the panels next and I want them to be bright. So these are just wires on a wall. So let's get on with it. Okay, so now we have our wires done. Oh, sorry, on this one. I'm just about to finish off the other one. There we go. I've also done some of the panel buttons, not all of them, because I'm going to do those next. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be using some of the bold titanium white. I'm going to be doing the lights, anything I want lit up and anything I want a bit brighter than those wires. So the lights on the side as well, and on there, and various other places. So let's crack on. With the white, bright white colours on there, I'm now going to paint some more fluorescent-esque colours. I'm just going to use the really bright contrasts. Bad Moon, the Magdra Flame? What's that meant to mean? Okay, with the white areas finished, and just going to go on one of the panels. There we go. I intend to leave the keys actually probably just white, to be fair, but I'm going to paint the all the monitors on the various things in Ethermatic blue. It was either that or a sort of more green sort of warp lightning type colour, but I kind of like this one. All the lighting is going to be done with Bad Moon yellow, and then there's various little keypads and everything, and I might use some of the Magdra Flame and can't say Flame, and contrast Battle Red on various areas. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so there we go, and with that the buildings are done. The only other thing I did was I added some red leather around here, which is another model colour from Vallejo. And just to show you some of the pieces, we've got the little control panels, we have the other building there, which I decided to keep some of the original brown on there. And we have the large towered sections. So, now that they're done, we can move on to some of the smaller stuff that's in the scenery. We can do some crates. We have the bike, and we have the little wolf cat. We have the lie, that needs to be done. We have some rocks, as I said earlier. So, the rocks, I've been looking at these most I've been painting, and I quite actually like them in grey, to be honest. So, I've replanned this as I've been going along. I kind of like them as they are. So I'm just going to go into some depth in using a little bit of Nuln Oil and a little bit of Athonian Camel Shade and a little bit of Agrax Earth Shade. I'm literally just going to keep it around the bottom, paint it into the recesses. I want to leave most of the colour as it is on these rocks, and the smaller ones as well. The other one that will get it is the little rock perch that the little owl's on. I think I'll have that so it blends in. Some of these little rocks on the biker base as well, I might leave in this colour. So, that's pretty straightforward for that. For the crates, I'm just going to contrast these from where they are. I've done some in Griffin Grey already, kind of like them. So I'm just going to pick some different contrast colours. So we've got some different coloured crates. The Gonk Droid, that's just going to get some Agrax wash on it, along with that. And then the bike, that's going to be painted in red. So I'm going to be using Thiston Red. And I'm also going to be obviously doing the metallic parts on it, for which I will probably use, I'll probably actually use the model colour again, because it makes a nice metallic colour. So let's get on with that. Okay, I'm going to start with the Athonian Camel Shade. And all I want to do is really just give a bit of depth. So I'm not going to cover this. This is just going to be finding places I can add a little bit of coloration and depth in there. And just maybe a little bit there as well. Just add in a little shadow. Like that. So I'm going to do that with the rocks, and then I'll come back. I'm also going to be using some Agrax Earth Shade. I'm just going to be feathering that in. It's got a much more browner feel to it than the brown and green. I don't want it to be too heavy. I just want this to really put some shadowing into this bottom part. I'm doing it while the other one's still wet, so there's also a bit of mix. It's not about when we did the bridges, but I don't want to oversaturate it. I just want some colour change, so that this can go on various tables and not just be like one monolithic colour. So just so it blends in. That's pretty much all I want to do with the Agrax. So I'm just going to repeat that, just a little bit extra on there, and just repeat that. Okay, so on the bike and the loft cap, I'm going to paint the grounding area, not all of it, but at least some little rocks this colour. I'm going to use this Agaros, is it? Or is it Agaros Dunes? I just want to see what that looks like. Because I want a darker colour than the Agrax will just give me on its own. That's pretty good. Gives a bit of rock definition then. Quite that. Now I'm going to do something similar with this, and then I'll be back. Okay, so we have those on there. I'm actually going to cover the gong droid and this little eyeball into some Agrax, and I'm going to mix in a little bit of non-oil just to make it so it's just not just brown. So I'm going to do that, and now that I've done this and this has begun to dry, what I want to do is actually add a little bit of this moss effect onto it. So I'm going to just be painting a little bit of that into any areas where I want a bit more green and where things could potentially grow. So just around there, sort of areas like that. Then this can oxidise and do what it does, and we'll see what we're left with. So we'll be back after that's done. With that, these rocks are finished. We've added some clump foliage to that, just to make it more interesting around the base of the rocks. With that, they are done, as of those ones, as of the rock parts of these. So what's left to do with the gong droid is to highlight some of the lights on it, same way I did on the buildings, same with the eyeball. For those I'm probably going to use Magdaros Flame, and then we're going to start on the bike with Mephiston Red on the panels, and then any metal bits I'm going to be using the Halio colour again to bring those back out. As far as the crates go, this is in Leviathan Blue. I think looks pretty good. Looks like one of the Imperial crates. So that's the Gryph-hound Grey, and we're going to be using two of the random colours for the other crates. So I'll show you those when they're done. Okay, so we painted some of the other crates. We've done these guys in Skeleton Horde. We've just done these guys stuck to the base there, with the shade Soul Blight, to keep them very grey. This is just an experiment to see what they look like. We've got Snakebite Leather, and we've also got Blood Angels Red. So just did them in different colours, just like different shipping crates. Job done. It's good enough for terrain. That's just going to be stood on most of the time. We've got a little gong droid again. Don't really need to do much else with that. He doesn't really stand up very well. That's the biggest problem with him, and he's probably going to end up just being like a Rex gong droid anyway. Eyeball's done. That's going to go into the building. And now we can move on to try and finish this bike. So we've done the red, we've done the metal parts. I've left some of the edges of the grey showing through the red, so eventually that will become like battle damage, or like battle, yeah, so like crashing into things damage. So the next thing we're going to do is paint the seat on that, and that is going to be done with some Thunder Brown, and then I'm going to just highlight it with some Deathclaw Brown just to make it look like it's a bit battered, to be honest. So that's what's coming next, so we'll get on with that. Okay, so the bike's nearly done. All I've done extra is highlight some of the areas in Stonewall Silver. I just want to make it look grimy and a bit more knackered up, so I'm going to give the whole thing an Agrax wash. And I think I'm going to be pretty much done with that because it's scenery. And then we've got these little guys. So we have a little owl. So his chest's going to be whitish, the wings are going to be brownish, and I'm going to put a little bit of green on the top of his head. So is it Morokai or Mori? I can't remember his name. The owl that's actually in Clone Wars that belongs to the daughter. It should look a bit like that, the one that follows Ahsoka around. With this guy, I'm actually going to do this as a white Lothcat, the one that follows Ezra around and helps him out. So what I actually want to do is, it's grey at the moment, is I'm going to give it a slight dry brush of the white, the titanium white, pick up the edges, pick out the teeth, pick out the eyes, and then it's actually not so far off the colour I want it to be. With the Astromech, I think I'm actually going to do that in purple, just as a bit different. So there's a bit of a different colour under there, because there's no purple on the board, and I kind of like purple here and there, so it should help it stand out. I think Mace Windu's was purple, his little droid, so there we go. So when we get Mace Windu on the board, it will make more sense. So there we go, so that's what I'm going to do next, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so just to finish off, after the wash, give it a quick dry brush all over of poly witch flesh, just to make it look knackered and a bit dusty. Threw a couple of the static grass tufts on, just to make it give a bit of colour variation on that base there. The bike is done. We used a very watered down warp lock. Which one was it? Warp Lightning, sorry. Yeah, Warp Lightning, watered down to get the green. To get the brown, very watered down Argos Dunes, and then again a poly witch flesh dry brush over the top of that. A little bit of Banebraid brown for the beak, and some Corvus black for the pupils of the eyes, as you can just about make out because the eyes are green. And with the Loth Cat, again we used poly witch flesh for the dry brush and some of the little tufts, just to break up some stuff on the base. The purple was Luxian purple, which is now my favourite purple, by the way. I really want to paint something in Luxian purple, like an entire army. And that was it, we're pretty much done. So that's all the scenery and all the little gribblies done. So let's go and have a look at that all on the table. So here is all the finished terrain. Hopefully you can see it all on there. Particularly happy with all this. It looks really good. Be suitable for modern Star Wars as well. I think that's one of the good things about it. I do quite like the terrain in this set. So there we go. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. And hopefully we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.